And after a week 2 hiatus, we are back with another episode of the Big Dynasty Energy Podcast. I'm your host, Tony Walker. You can find me on Twitter at TonyTBDE, joined by my friend who is currently south of the border in Tijuana, Kevin. You can find him on Twitter at OffsetKevin. How's Mexico going, buddy?
Wonderful. Hola. That's about all I know. Yeah, just down here doing I'm here for work, so it's nothing that crazy or fun, but I'm eating like I have absolutely no shame at all. So that's wonderful.
Oh yeah, we were texting back and forth before we got the setup fired up, and you went to like a Brazilian steakhouse type thing right down the road from your hotel. How was that?
So I love going to Fogo in the States. This was kind of like Fogo, not quite as fancy, but the English-Spanish barrier was a big deal there because some of these cuts of meat came out and they were not the standard looking cuts of meat. And I had no idea what they're giving me. I got one that was like, oh, this looks like a nice little steak. And they bring it out and it's just a big old bone with marrow pouring out. And it's like, that's not what I thought it'd be.
They're like, oh, look at this gordito gringo. Let's just get whatever we can get rid of in the back.
Yeah, I was just the dumpster table. Anything they couldn't get rid of, they just dump it on me.
So were you smart though? And before you headed to the restaurant, did you like turn the AC down in the hotel room down to like 65? Because I'm sure you got some sort of sweats going on right now.
Yeah, it's just starting to hit. I probably could have the AC a little lower, but I'll do that when we're done.
Well, good to know. I mean, we do got a good show tonight. A lot has happened. I mean, like I said, we took a little hiatus in week 2. Traveling has kind of kicked both me and Kevin square in the dick the last couple of weeks. So glad to be back. First, let's start off with some injuries. 2 key ones. I mean, one on offense that I think has, impacted the majority of fantasy players scrambling to figure out what they're going to do before week 3 kicks off. And that's Cleveland running back Nick Chubb. Definitely out for the season. And, after watching the clip over and over again, you got to wonder, what's the, future look like for him after the season. He sustained a very similar injury in college when he played at Georgia. Kevin, I mean, if you're a Nick Chubb owner, where are you going? How are you pivoting? Are you going to Jerome Ford right away? Are you trying to get Kareem Hunt? Are you going elsewhere? Like, how does this impact people's teams, especially so early on in the fantasy season?
It's horrible and it sucks. Nick Chubb was my love heading into the year, and I thought he was validating it too, because my big thing was I thought he still had plenty of miles left and he was going to catch the ball more this year. And it seemed like that was starting to come true. And then this happens.
Yeah.
First thing, I would have just backed up the Brinks truck on the waiver wire for Jerome Ford. He looked great filling in for him. I think, even though they signed Hunt, I think they want him to be the guy and to kind of hold the Nick Chubb role. So he would be option 1A, absolutely, but you needed to spend a pretty penny to get him on the waiver wire this week. So if you missed out on him, I don't know. I'm not as high on Nick Chubb. I feel like
Nick Chubb or Kareem Hunt?
Kareem Hunt. My bad. I'm not as high on Kareem Hunt. He was a free agent for a reason. If he was that amazing, I feel like people would have been jumping on him and not let him go into the season unsigned. It felt like he started to slow down last year already. I'm just not excited about Kareem Hunt. I would be all in on Ford as the option. And then if I'm a Nick Chubb owner, I don't know. He doesn't have any real trade value right now, so I guess I'm holding him, but I'm nervous.
And you're talking specifically for dynasty purposes.
Yeah, for dynasty.
Yeah, I mean,
redraft, he's cut.
Yeah, he's cut in every redraft league. Yeah, I mean, let's not forget, Jerome Ford is the reason why Kareem Hunt was a free agent. Younger, faster, better shape. I mean, Kareem Hunt, he did look a little thick towards the end of last season. I mean, he had plenty of chances. I mean, even before the draft, Seattle was a team that a lot of teams thought that he could have went to before the draft. Baltimore, as soon as J.K. Dobbins went down a couple weeks ago, a lot of people thought he would be going to Baltimore because he could be staying in the AFC North. He would have that competitive advantage knowing the Browns offense. And the fact that he didn't get signed until now, this to me definitely shows it was a chemistry signing and nothing more than that. It was not a talent signing. There were other guys on the waiver wire or a trade block that I think that the Browns could have went after. They got him just because he was just with the team, technically 3 weeks ago if you go back to last season. So
yeah, I mean, Minnesota hosted him and New Orleans, I believe, too, and they both had him in and then just said, nah.
when it was reported, he was asking for quite a bit of money too. I mean, so the fact that he was looking to be a a lead back with the kind of pay. I mean, and he's not young. I mean, I think he's what 27, 28 years old. I mean, he's getting up there. Definitely has less miles on his tires than a lot of running backs his age. With the suspension a couple years ago and all that good stuff. But yeah, I mean, I don't have too much expectations for Kareem Hunt, especially this week. If you did pick him up, I would advise not playing him. I would have a wait and see approach to see how they balance Jerome Ford and Kareem Hunt over the next few weeks, just because he just signed yesterday. I mean, it's not like even with him being on the offense last year, like things still change year over year. There's still going to be new plays. There's still going to be new audibles and whatnot that he's going to have to get used to. So um, Kareem Hunt, I'm also not in on, and I'd be going after Jerome Ford. I know one guy in our dynasty league, shout out Jeff Heine. I think he literally backed up the Brings truck. He threw his entire fab for the entire season on Jerome Ford. So
And he was not a Nick Chubb owner. He just did that,
he just did it
well,
to
because
get
his
him.
because his running back sucked.
Well, yeah, I mean,
um,
yeah,
but I mean, I put in a bid of 90 and came up short. I wasn't
that's
expecting that.
crazy. That's crazy. That is absolutely crazy. And then another injury that just broke today on the defensive side of the ball, cornerback Trevon Diggs for the Dallas Cowboys torn ACL today in practice. Um, as much as this is an impact, if you do run a standard league with the defense on a roster spot, there's definitely implications there on the interceptions and the scoring side. But what does this do to this offense? I mean, Dallas's defense has looked really good this year so far because of the tandem of Trevon Diggs and Stephon Gilmore. I mean, they have been allowing this defensive line to eat it in coverage sacks, get at the quarterback without having to have more than 5, 6 guys in the box and really blitzing. I think this is going to help guys like Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, and this high-powered offense who's already looked really good because they are going to lose a defensive stud in Trayvon Diggs. And so I feel like they're going to have to start playing more aggressively. Their games are going to get a little bit tighter once you lose that good of a cornerback. So I don't really know if there's much to add. Love to hear your take if you have a same lens or a vision with the Trayvon Diggs, how it's going to impact this offense. But yeah,
It's
always shitty news to hear a guy getting hurt like that, especially in practice midweek.
I mean, it's a big loss. He's an elite cornerback, but I mean, so Dallas's defense has been just lights out to start the year, and it's definitely the secondary. But I think the biggest factor has been Micah Parsons being just
Hmm.
unbelievable. The pressure they're getting on quarterbacks, and Parsons is just everywhere. So I don't think that this is. I don't think that the dancing coffin guys are dancing with Dallas's defense on their shoulders. I think
No,
Dallas still has some juice in that defense, maybe a little bit worse, but I still think you got a pretty good defense in Dallas. So I don't know. I think Dallas has just feasted on the New York teams for the first 2 weeks, and
very
it
true.
will be a little bit more competitive going forward. So I think there is going to be a resurgence for some of the receiving and passing numbers there. But yeah, I think the impact. I'm not saying that he's not a great cornerback, but I do think the defense will still be good. So I think the impact is not as big as we might think.
Agreed. Awesome. Well, before we get into our first segment, live look. We're recording this right now, 9:13 Central, 7:13 Pacific time. Good game going on out in Santa Clara, California. San Francisco 49ers currently the Giants 17-12. Me and Kevin, we started to play. I know we did a segment a couple weeks ago on prize picks. We got some sleeper action going on. If you haven't played sleeper picks yet, make sure to go check them out. You can only play on the mobile app. Check them out right now. We're waiting on Darren Waller. I need 3 more catches, and Danny Dimes is not doing anything with his legs tonight. We need him to start running the ball. So more on that later in the show. But next, let's get to our first segment. And Kevin and I, we're going to go through buys, sells, and holds through 2 weeks. Guys that we're either targeting in trade, guys that we're looking to sell, or guys that we're just not too sure yet. And so we're going to say we're going to hold. Kevin, I'll kick us off. This guy that I have him in one league this year in redraft. I wanted to get him in dynasty. I wasn't able to last year. I'm definitely buying on him this year in all formats. He looks like the real deal. And that's Buffalo Bills running back James Cook. We said in one show that I've never been too fond of Buffalo Bills running backs because they have Josh Allen, who's essentially a second running back in that backfield, but also they've always had a million guys, rotating in that offense. This year so far, with 29 attempts, James Cook has put up almost 200 yards, no touchdowns, but he's currently running back number 9 in PPR formats. 10.3 points in week 1, 19.9 points in week 2. I mean, the guy's looking good. He looks explosive. He definitely does not look like his brother, Dalvin Cook. He's definitely more of that shifty kind of scat back. Really good job catching the ball. Targeted 10 times so far this season, catching the ball 8 of those 10. I don't know. There's something about this offense this year that I feel like they went into this year expecting it to be the Stephon Diggs show to try and keep him in Buffalo, to keep him happy. But James Cook has looked really good. He hasn't put up, explosive numbers, but he's done enough to catch at least my eye. And I think a lot of people to say, what do I need to do to get this guy? Thoughts on James Cook?
I will echo your thoughts. Going into the year, I was lower on him than a lot of the consensus rankings, and I was probably off. He's a guy that I would definitely want to hold. Or want to buy. The Bills, before that, they just haven't really used a running back
Mm-hmm.
the way other teams do. I mean, Josh Allen was a running back, so to see them be a little bit more committed to actually having a running back do things is definitely a welcome surprise. So yeah, I would be trying to buy James Cook. I've liked what I've seen.
Awesome. Let's head over to you. Who is your first buy, seller, hold heading into week 3?
So when we first talked about this, I had a little bit different understanding. On my buy list, I'm looking at guys that I think started off slow, but I think still got it in them. So I think the price is right for them. So I'm targeting them because I think they're going to still have a great year, but maybe their owners feeling a little about them. So you can take advantage of that. Um, my first buy is Jared Lawrence. If people are actually looking to sell him, he's started off the season a little bit slow, not the best numbers. Like I think he's outside of the top 10 right now in quarterbacks.
You Trevor
Um,
Lawrence?
no, sorry,
You
Jared.
you had too much meat for dinner tonight, buddy. What
What
is
did I?
going on?
What
Jared
did I say?
Lawrence?
Did I say that? Hang on.
Jared Stidham, Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, I said Jared Lawrence. Yep, I'm Trevor Lawrence. Yeah, I told you, man. As soon as I get back to the hotel, the meat's gonna kick in and the
I was
margaritas.
gonna say, I was
Um,
gonna say, how many margaritas you have with dinner too?
Too. But you add that with unknown meats, you don't know what's going to
You don't know
happen.
what you're
But
getting.
all right, so casting aside that I don't know what the hell I'm talking about, Trevor Lawrence, he is currently the QB 23, and I think that will not hold. But I think if you got some guys that drafted him pretty high to be their quarterback, they might be
Mhm.
panicking. And I think there's better days ahead for him. So I would be targeting Trevor Lawrence. Uh, I try to if you have a guy that maybe started fast that you don't believe in, try to see if you can make a deal for Trevor Lawrence. I think the price is right for him right now, and he's going to be good the rest of the year.
Yeah, I mean, looking at his schedule, especially one of the things that I look at, especially in Dynasty before the season starts on positions where I'm a little questionable at, is I look at weeks 15, 16, and 17 right away. What are those weeks? Playoffs. Week 15, 16, and 17, Trevor Lawrence plays Baltimore, Tampa Bay, and Carolina. Competitive
Mm.
games, yet against defenses that I don't think are anything on paper or what we've seen so far that scream anything special. And yeah, I think this offense, there's still a lot going on. Doug Peterson's in his second year. Calvin Ridley, it's his second game back after 2 years of not playing. The backfield, they're still trying to figure out with Travis Etienne and Tank Bigsby trying to get that timeshare figured out. There's a lot of moving pieces here. Trevor Lawrence has showed that he has the tangibles, he has the ability, he has the skill set, he has the athleticism to do everything you want in a quarterback. So, redraft, I am sending a high end tight end, maybe a higher end wide receiver to a team that really needs a wide receiver, a skill position player for Trevor Lawrence. And in Dynasty, he's the kind of guy. I mean, he's 23 years old. I would throw the farm at this guy. I mean,
Yeah,
if
I'd
you,
send I'd offer up Jared Lawrence for him, as a matter of fact.
I mean, I would honestly package, a guy like Deontay Johnson and a future first round or future second round. That's how high I think of Trevor Lawrence. And a lot of it is the fact that he's 6'6", 220. He plays in a fast paced offense and he's 23 years old. I mean, you're not going
And
to
he
find
celebrates at Waffle House,
he
so you got to
celebrates
give
at
props
Waffle
there.
House at 3 o'clock in the morning. I mean, the guy's a man of the people, and he's the guy that I would definitely want on my fantasy team. So the next guy is the guy that I don't want, and I will be trying to trade him in the 2 leagues that I did end up with him. And that is Philadelphia running back DeAndre Swift. I said at the beginning of the year, I did not like DeAndre Swift. He came out and had, I want to say, a career high in terms of NFL rushing, 175 yards rushing in week 2 against the porous Minnesota Vikings defense.
I would
Um,
say there's a reason for that
yeah.
one, I think.
So week 1 he played 29% of the snaps. Last week he played 75% of the snaps. He had 28 total carries for 175 yards, good for 6.25 yards per carry, and a touchdown. Tacked on 3 catches for 6 yards. I'm still not sold. There's still the injury concerns. There's still um, this offense. Philly has not looked anything special this year to me. Two games in which I think that they could easily be 0-2. Um, I thought somehow the Vikings were going to eke out, overtime at least. A couple poor play calling and time management on their part, but DeAndre Swift, sell him now. He just had a damn near 30-point game. I think he could have a decent 2-week stretch here against Tampa Bay and Washington, but after that, I mean, I really don't like this. Normally with these running backs, you tend to see things flatten out, especially with the run by committee approach. I expect Rashad Penny and Kenneth Gainwell to start seeing the field more and more as the season goes on. So if you have DeAndre Swift, especially in Dynasty, he is only 24. If you're looking for picks, you could probably get a second round pick for him. If you're looking for players, probably a high end wide receiver 2, maybe a back end tight end 1. Sell him to a team that needs running backs now, because I promise you by the end of the season, he will not be running back 14.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty safe bet. It's interesting. They are infatuated with Gainwell. It feels
Mm-hmm.
like the coaching staff. I don't think he's as good as Swift, but they like him more. I think Swift, if they actually gave him the carries, he could be an elite running back. But he'd probably get hurt.
Yep.
And I think that therein is the whole reason why this is going on. Is Philadelphia doesn't give a damn about your fantasy team. They want running backs at the end of the season in the playoffs, so they are gonna rotate these guys in and out and keep them fresh. So I think Swift will have some dynamite games this year, but it's going to be a hell of a time trying to
Mm-hmm.
figure out which ones it will be. I think it's going to be very random unless injuries dictate that there's only one healthy guy. It's going to be just, you're going to be playing roulette trying to figure out which one's going to hit.
100%. And I think that Philadelphia, I mean, they could quickly become a team like Seattle. I know you said it in a couple of podcast episodes. Um, Good team, fantasy frustrating, right? They have a lot of mouths to feed on this offense, and they have a lot of guys that want the ball. You got AJ Brown, who just got traded for a package, before last season. Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, plus this running back room. Like, there's a lot of mouths to feed. I think that Philly saw that they were running a hurry up offense, and that the ground attack was working on that outside zone. So they kept giving him the ball. Once they start getting teams who can make adjustments and are not trying to tank, I think, for a quarterback next year, I don't think he has as much of success as he did. I don't think it's necessarily going to always be as bad as week 1, his 1 carry for 3 yards against New England. But I definitely don't see it being no 28 attempts per game role for him.
If you want to play a nice drinking game, you should go back and listen to our NFC West roundup and count how many times I said the word frustrating in that episode, and you will be hammered.
Yeah, I want to say the over under is probably about 13 and a half, and I'm taking the
Yeah.
over on that by a mile. So, all right, Kevin, who is next on your list of buy, sell, and hold?
All right, so we're talking cells here. Um, get your tears ready. I am probably gonna sell Kirk Cousins if I have him. He's been dynamite to start the year. Um, I just we've played this game before, and I know that there's gonna be a stinker game coming up, and perhaps
Got
with
past prime
adding,
time though. He got past prime time. Hell of a
he
game
did
on
get past
Thursday
prime
night.
time. And I mean, hell, I'm the one that's in the Instagram reel last week said that I wasn't in on Puka Nakua, so maybe I'm just a dumbass. But I feel like Kirk Cousins is at peak value right now, and maybe you could trade him for Trevor Lawrence. Maybe you can trade him for Jared Lawrence. I don't know, but I think right now you can trade him, and he will not finish the year at the ranking he is right now.
Yeah, he's got to be what,
Um,
top 6 right now. He's got to be up there.
I think he's top 3 right now.
I mean,
Let's
he's
see
just
here.
been throwing the ball downfield, eyes closed, hoping to God Justin Jefferson's down there somewhere.
So if I go, uh, I need a more robust system here. Kirk Cousins is the QB1 right now, number one overall,
So at first I
averaging
was
24 and a half points a game.
so at first I was like, I'm not trading Kirk Cousins because he's been playing really well. But as soon as you said that he's QB1, I am absolutely selling because people are going to see he's the number one quarterback, and we live in a reactionary society, Kevin, and it's super unfortunate. You can probably get a big haul for the current number one quarterback. Um, I was thinking like he was like fourth or fifth. I did not expect him to be first, but yeah,
Your
I mean, if
top 5 QBs right now in fantasy are Kirk Cousins, Justin Herbert, Tua Tago Tag, Tua Tags,
Tonga
Jordan
Vailoa,
Love, and let's ride Russell Wilson.
I told you about Russell Wilson before the season started. I mean, I'm not shocked there, but that's just because he's gonna be throwing the ball a million times a game and hoping to God that, Cortland Sutton and whoever caught that Hail Mary before they choked on the 2-point conversion last week.
Yeah, I mean his might be a little bit more fluky, but
Yeah.
I mean it's still solid.
The only caveat to me of not wanting to trade Kirk Cousins right now is because of the fact that the running game has been so poor. I mean, I know the Vikings just traded for Cam Akers essentially for free. I mean, they swapped
Yeah.
a 6th-round conditional for a 7th-round conditional and Cam Akers. I mean, we moved back
I
30.
saw I was gonna say I saw online that the 2016 draft is the latest you're allowed to trade. So I think the trade that they completed is physically the lowest compensation you can offer for a
Mhm.
player. A swap of a 7th rounder for a 6th rounder in the 2016 draft.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Vikings, I mean, it's worth a shot, right? I mean, the running game has been atrocious. KOC, he's got a rapport with him. I mean, and I don't know if it's true or not, but I was scrolling Instagram reels before the show started, and it was one of those comedic skits or whatever, and they're like, how did you end up here? And Cam Akers goes, "Oh, I may have said something about Sean McVay's wife. Have you heard this report?"
I I mean, I haven't heard the report, but there's something going on because the same shit happened last year with him, where
Yep.
he was supposed to be the guy and then he just disappeared for no reason, healthy scratch.
Yeah, all I'll say is something about a hole hitting it harder and Sean McVay's wife. I'm not going to get into it, but that is the conversation from what I heard of what was said, and that's why Camp Makers is now wearing purple and gold instead of blue and yellow.
Holy
So
moly.
that would have been a great conversation to listen to if you're in the locker room for that. That would have been just a chef's kiss of a conversation to be a fly on the wall. Um, all right, so my last guy, I'm also going quarterback. I'm also buying this guy, and that is not the number 1 overall quarterback, but the number 26 overall quarterback, Dallas Cowboy quarterback Dak Prescott. I think week 1 he had a stinker against the Giants. It was a 40-0 blowout. He could have taken a nap, and he still would have been putting up points without having to produce. Last week he looked really good, 31 for 38, 255 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns. And he's running the ball again. He did have 6 attempts last week. I think that shows a sign that he did have that leg injury a year and a half ago. So him tucking the ball and running, even though it's only for 14 yards. I like Dak, and the reason why I like Dak is because I like this offense, and it's primarily because I like Tony Pollard and I like CeeDee Lamb. He's kind of in a situation where I think Kirk Cousins kind of lives right now too. Of he doesn't have to be anything more than a guy that can throw the ball 15 yards down the field, and his guy that's catching the ball is going to do the rest, and he's going to benefit from those stats. So, 30 years old, dynasty. I think people who do have him, myself included in our house league, I'm either holding him or I'm trading for him because I think that with his schedule, Arizona this week, New England after that, does face San Francisco week 5. But again, looking at weeks 15, 16, and 17 at Buffalo, at Miami, and then at home against Detroit, I think those are going to be games that Dallas is going to have to win. I think they're going to be against defenses that are good, but nothing that's extremely special or difficult where I'm not playing him. And I think their games are going to be close because all three of those teams are going to be fighting for a playoff spot. And I think Dak's going to have to be throwing the ball downfield. So for the playoff implications, for just, who Dak is as a player, what I see in this offense, he's a guy that I would definitely go after because I think you can get him for relatively cheap too. I don't think people are asking for a first round pick or a high end player. I think they're looking for a second or third round pick. You can get him pretty cheap right now. So any take on Dak from your side? I know you're not the biggest Dak fan, but I mean, for what his value is right now, do you see yourself wanting to target him at all, or are you staying clear of the Cowboys' offensive play caller right now?
I mean, in my redraft league, you can just pick him up right now. I think he's out there.
Really?
Um, so yeah, his value is definitely low. You could probably just get him as a throw in on a bigger trade. And I think there's better days ahead for the passing and receiving guys in Dallas. So I mean, CD's still doing all right. He had a good yardage game last week. So yeah, I think Dak, if you have a QB1 that you're a little bit not sold on or worried about, or maybe you have Anthony Richardson and you're worried he's going to keep getting hurt every single week,
Mm-hmm.
you can have a nice security blanket in Dak that I think you can turn to, and he'll get you some solid points moving forward.
Agreed. Awesome. Well, on to your number 3. Who are you buy, selling, or holding?
Sorry, I was just watching Daniel Jones have an incomplete pass to Waller. We needed that
Yeah.
effing.
Yeah, it was a fade route on 3rd and long, and he just not looking good for tonight. But there's plenty of time. We still got the 4th quarter. I think Waller, he's at I want to say he's at like 3 catches, 4 catches, somewhere around there. But all right, wrap us
Guys,
up with the
I'm
segment,
buying.
Kevin.
Let's see here. I'm trying to decide between you know what? Someone that I'm selling right now, who's also probably at an all-time high and just due for his next injury, is Raheem Mostert. Um, I don't know exactly what the market is, but I think people might look at his stats right now and go,
Wow,
"Holy
he's a
cow!
great running back. Yep.
What a great running back!" And he can be a great running back, and he's in a great offense. But he has a track record of getting hurt a
Mm-hmm.
lot, and he's only played 2 games. And there's at some point there might be a shift to the rookie. At some point, Jeff Wilson might come back from his injury that no one has ever really said what it is, just that it
I think it
is.
was a abdominal strain. I thought.
Is that what it
I
is?
think so.
So Raheem Mostert is the RB6 right now in PPR. Um, So if there's people looking at him thinking he's going to be a RB1 for the rest of the year, I think you might be able to get good value for a different RB1. So I think I'd be looking to trade Mostert. And also, I maybe there's a Jonathan Taylor trade happening. I think if there is still going to happen, the delay has been people are waiting for the end of that 4 week
Mm-hmm.
period of him being on the pup. So if we do see a Jonathan Taylor trade, it's probably going to be right when his time on the pup list is over. So who knows? Maybe Mostert come week 5 is on the bench because they got Jonathan Taylor. I don't know. There's a lot of
Or in a Colts
ifs.
jersey. And at
Yeah,
that point, are you buying him? I mean, if he's behind a healthy Anthony Richardson, I I don't like that at all. I think Anthony Richardson has shown he can be Justin Fields, and you don't need a competent running back to have a good running game. So,
yeah. And I think Mostert is in a good system fit right now. I
mm-hmm.
don't know how he fits in Indianapolis. And honestly, if I was Indianapolis, I don't want a
Oh no,
aging Mostert in
31-year
return.
old.
I would probably be asking for a chain.
Yeah. No, that was my next point was even then. So 2 comments on Mostert. One, if that does happen, right, and I think that's a big if still. If Jonathan Taylor does end up in Miami, I definitely think a chain ends up in Indy along with multiple high value picks. In that case, Mostert will turn into a situational back, which could be good still. Could be a goal line back. Could be the change of pace guy where he's going to be catching the ball. Um, I don't see that happening. If JT ends up in Miami, Mostert becomes just RB6 to RB36 within 1 week, because he's going to put up zero. The second thing is on Mostert is he is the Kirk Cousin effect right now, I think, on running backs. Going back to our conversation around having a high ranking player 2 weeks in, I think people look at that RB6 and they're like, oh my God, this guy is he's the second coming of Jesus Christ. I need to send, you know, two first round picks or something for him in Dynasty, or I need to send him a CD Lamb if I'm a RB desperate team. No, I mean, I think that he's an okay back. I mean, you got to remember he busted a 30-yard run. I think it was for his second touchdown that iced the game. I mean, you take that away, sure, he's still sitting around 15 points. But I mean, he had a couple of plays where he had chunk plays that made up the majority of his night. So yeah, no, I've never been a fan of Raheem Mostert because you never know when he's not going to get off the ground. He's always had injury concerns, going back to San Francisco. So yeah, if I had Mostert, I would be trying to sell him for whatever I could right now too, especially with his current RB6 ranking.
Yeah.
All right, so I think that does it for buy, sells, and holds.
I
We're
got
gonna.
I got one more if you want me
Oh,
to, if you will
yeah.
indulge me.
No, I'm
We're gonna
definitely
call this
interested.
one a dump, just
Ooh,
complete dump. It's not gonna be that big a shock. Deshaun Watson, if you got him on your roster, uh, just get rid of him. I think the only reason anyone has Deshaun Watson on their roster is they are waiting for Houston Deshaun Watson to show up. And this version of Deshaun Watson that's in Cleveland, maybe he's a little bit more tense. He hasn't been getting his massages. I don't know, but he's never going to be the Houston guy again. So I'm moving on. I want that roster spot for someone worthwhile.
yeah, Deshaun Watson. I mean, he hasn't played terribly. I mean, he's 7 spots ahead of my guy Dak Prescott. I mean, right now he's sitting at QB 15. Week 1, 21 points. Last week, 12 points. He's thrown the ball 70 times already this season, and he's only completed 38 passes, so just over 50% accuracy. Um, and his rushing is not what it was in Houston. Back in the DeAndre Hopkins days when they would just clear the field and he would take off for 40 some yards. Yeah, I mean, if I have Deshaun Watson, I think I'm trying to trade him for something before I just cut him. Because I think there might be someone who still has that faith in your league that, okay, he could still become the Houston version of Deshaun Watson. And even if he did, like, let's say you did trade him in Dynasty for a future 3rd round pick or 4th round pick, or just a bench player just to have for volume, and Deshaun Watson ends up being a front end or a top end QB1. Let's say he finishes QB7 this year, because I think that's as high as he could really get to. I'm still not mad at that, because I don't think the difference between QB7 and QB12 or QB13 is so much of a difference that getting something for him now before he just completely starts to tank or whatever, I'm selling him now too. I wouldn't necessarily dump him, but I mean, if I'm not getting offers, likewise, I'm dropping him to get that extra roster spot.
Yeah.
Plus, you throw in the whole Nick Chubb conundrum and trying to figure out who's going to be handing the ball off to him. And Jerome Ford is, he looks good, but he had one good game. So I'm not trying to say that this is a revitalized offense and everything's going to run through him and it's going to open up the field for Deshaun Watson. I still think people are going to be eyeing in on Amari Cooper and Elijah Moore in this passing game. And I think they're going to make it difficult for Deshaun Watson. I don't see him having a good year this year at all. All right. So to wrap the show up, Kevin and I, like I said in a previous episode, we had gone through. I did a slip over on Prize Picks. Well, we run our house league and a couple of other of our leagues through the Sleeper app. Probably the best place for Dynasty Fantasy Football. You can have multiple team trades, trade future draft picks, trade fab, light years ahead of competitors like Yahoo Sports and ESPN Fantasy. Um, like these other sites, Sleeper also has DFS, so you can have prop lines. You can have up to a 100x multiplier, up to 8 players. And the great thing is you can have a minimum bet starting at $1. So to wrap up the show, Kevin and I, we're going to go over 4 picks that we like for the Sunday slate. We'll be each taking our top 2 picks, combining it for a 4-man slip. and we will track that this weekend, and we will have an update for that slip next week on our show for week 4. Kevin, kick us off. Who is your first prop line that you're targeting for this Sunday?
All right, so I did my own 4 line pick here, and number one was Jalen Hurts to have over a half rushing touchdown. So Jalen Hurts to get 1 rushing touchdown or more against the Tampa Bay defense.
Yeah, I like that, especially that they run that stupid fucking quarterback sneak that the committee, or what is it, the competition committee or whatever, decided to not ban that play. Look, if they get the ball within the 3-yard line, which they're going to run that play 3 times. I mean, even Jason
Yeah,
Kelsey on his podcast with his brother Travis Kelsey, it's 70 some percent probability of getting at least 1 yard on that play. So yeah, I mean, that's a prop line that I'm running almost every week, just hoping that they get within the 3, because if they do, I know for a fact Jalen Hurts is going to get that rushing touchdown.
yeah,
All right, and then my first prop line that I really like this week is also a quarterback rushing prop, but it's Patrick Mahomes over 17 and a half rushing yards. Through the first 2 weeks, he has a total of 13 rushing attempts for 75 yards. Week 1, he averaged 7.5 yards per carry. Last week against Jacksonville, he averaged 4.3 yards a carry. I just think this line is broken. I think that 17 and a half yards, that's one play. Especially with Travis Kelsey back, I think that's when he runs the ball even more, because Travis Kelsey is going to clear out that middle of the field running his seam route that he's so good at. I like this a lot. I think that Patrick Mahomes continues to run the ball when he needs to.
yeah, yeah. I like that one. To jump right into mine, I have uh, my next line, Patrick Mahomes, the over on 282 passing
Mm-hmm.
yards. I was just going off of they're playing the Chicago Bears, who have a just dreadful pass defense.
Mm-hmm.
Did get lit up through the air. And Kelsey's back, and Mahomes hasn't had just a dynamic passing game yet this year. So I think they want to just have him unleash and have a typical Patrick Mahomes 300, 400 yard passing game. I guess the only risk would be if it's a blowout. But so yeah, I'm in on Mahomes too. I was just going through passing yards.
For sure. Yeah, I like both of those lines. The only reason why I'm leaning rushing over passing is because to that blowout factor. Again, never judge a lineup or a prop bet based on the blowout factor, because weird shit happens in the NFL. Right? Atlanta is what, 2-0? I mean, weird shit happens in the NFL. So
Bijan.
Bijan's looking good, man. I almost had him in my top 4 for this weekend, but there are just a couple other lines that I think are just way too low, that I want to take advantage of before they get bumped. So Patrick Mahomes, yeah, I'm good with either of those, rushing or passing. We'll get to which one we'll fight over once we get to the end of our 4 picks. My second pick is going to be over 3.5 receptions for New England Patriot tight end Hunter Henry. Again, I think this line is just way too low. Mac Jones has been leaning on this guy so far this season. Through 2 weeks, he has 13 targets for 11 catches. That's an 80-some% catch ratio when he's targeted. Right now, he's tight end 2. He is his top red zone target. I think that this guy could see 4 catches just in the red zone this week against the Jets. Again, the Jets, who are historically bad at covering tight ends. I think Hunter Henry, he's going to overpower this defense. I think that they're going to try and get to Mac Jones with the pass rush. Sauce Gardner's going to try and lock up either Kendrick Bourne or Devontae Parker. I think that Hunter Henry is going to be the safety blanket, and he might not have a ton of yards, but he's going to have a ton of targets this weekend. So I'm taking
Yeah.
that over all day this weekend.
I'm just looking at it right now. Week 1 against what I think we think is a good defense in Philly.
Yep.
He had 5 receptions on 6 targets.
Yep.
Last week against Miami, 6 receptions on 7 targets. So we're just looking at him to clear 4 here. It seems like a pretty safe bet.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, now let me flip back over to my bet slip here. I don't know. This one might raise an eyebrow, so I don't know if it's going to make it on our final one. But I got a feeling. I got Najee Harris over on the rushing yards. They got him at 48 and a half rushing yards. Um, he's he's sucked the first 2 weeks of the year, but I still think that they want it to be the Najee Harris start running show, and Jalen. They want Warren to be the guy that's catching the ball,
Hmm.
having a few more, being more of a third down guy, and they're playing the Las Vegas Raiders, who have been just horrible run
Yeah.
defense to start the year. Um, so I like the matchup, and I think that Pittsburgh knows that they actually need a running game. So I think they are going to be dedicated to trying to actually get Najee going. And I think clearing 49 yards is not that too big of an ask for him.
Yeah, I mean, looking at his first two games, so week one against San Francisco, who I think is the complete opposite, that they're an incredible run stopping defense. He averaged 5.17 yards a carry. Last week against Cleveland, he averaged 4.3 yards a carry. I think this is going to be a slower played game. I mean, when you have Kenny Pickett and Jimmy Garoppolo, that does not scream passing attack fireworks. Like this is going to be a game that is won by defense and running the ball. Pittsburgh, I think their defense this year has looked incredible. I think they had their fantasy team, or the defense had 22 some or 23 fantasy points last week. Um, I think Pittsburgh, they know that they're struggling on offense, and they're just eking by. I think that this is the game that they're going to try and get Najee going, because he hasn't looked like himself this year so far. And I mean, if he can, just split that difference between that 4.3 and that 5.2, and if he can average 4.6 yards a carry, I don't see him not getting
11 carries.
13 to 17 carries and easily smashing that. So I'm actually a big fan of that, especially given the matchup.
All right.
Uh, my third one, I'm going back to the rushing side with quarterbacks, and this one I'm not as high on is Patrick Mahomes, but that's our boy Jared Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence this week against Houston, over 13 and a half rushing yards. Through the first 2 weeks, he's smashed this line. Week 1, 21 yards on 7 attempts. Week 2, 26 yards on 5 attempts. That was against Indianapolis and Kansas City. Both teams, I think, having a more mature and better defense than Houston. I think in a year from now, I might not be taking this line, because I think Houston's defense will be better, but that's not the case this weekend. So I think it's one that if you're trying to run a QB rushing slip, if you're trying to try and get that link with certain players on the Jaguars offense that are more of the pass catchers, and not be able to get that block slip by having Trevor Lawrence's passing prop, I think that his rushing upside is still there. I don't think it's as high as Patrick Mahomes, but I do think that if you are desperate for, a quick play, I think that he's an option there.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that one. I didn't in the background look up the stats like I did the other ones. Let me just quick pull up my boy Jared Lawrence here.
Yeah, so week 1 he averaged 3 yards per carry. Week 2 he averaged just over 5 yards a carry. I mean, if he can, again, split the difference, that's what I do. Is I'm a man of averages, especially with a small data size, or a data set. If he can split that, if he can rush for 4 yards a carry, do I think he's going to rush the ball 3.5 times? I think so. I think that Will
Yeah.
Anderson, I think D'Amico Ryans, he's going to try and get after him, knowing that this is, I think, D'Amico Ryans' first. Well, let me check. Is it his first divisional game? I'm not sure. Against a divisional opponent, I think that they're going to obviously do everything they can to win, but I think that's going to start by getting after Trevor Lawrence. So I think that means that he's going to have to step up in the pocket and take off running. So, again,
So you said it was 13 and a half
13 and a half. Yep.
yards?
Yep.
Jesus. Yeah. I mean, he ran the ball 7 times week 1, 5 times last week. Even if he only runs the ball 4 times this week, he's just got to average like 3.5 yards a
Mm-hmm.
carry. That's nothing. Um, the only concern would be if he just magically doesn't run this week, but it feels like all he's got to do is run the ball 4 times for minimal gains. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's where, especially early on in the season, these odd makers quite haven't tightened up the odds yet. And that's where I think, Patrick Mahomes and Trevor Lawrence, come week 9, 10, it's not, 17 and a half yards for Mahomes. It might be 23 and a half, 24 and a half, which again, I'm still not going to bark at, but I'm definitely going to jump on, a 13 and a half rushing line for Trevor Lawrence against a team that again, and I could be off. I mean, this could be a game where we expect, at home the Jaguars to just blow out Houston in the first half. I mean, this could be a game where Houston hangs into in the end, and it's going to come down to just a couple of gritty plays to get into field goal position, and that wouldn't surprise me either. And that could be done by Trevor Lawrence. So, um, the more we talk about it, I almost like his line more than Patrick Mahomes' line now against Chicago, because I could see Mahomes having a picnic behind that O line
Yeah.
against this defense and just not getting touched and not even needing to stepping up in the pocket. So Trevor Lawrence
My
over 30.
thing is I I th- I like the Trevor Lawrence one more, even though Mahomes I think has a little bit more rushing ability, because I don't think Kansas City wants Mahomes rushing if they can
Hmm.
help it. Um, and so again, I'm maybe being guilty of assuming game script, but I think they're going to be able to throw on Chicago, and if they can avoid him rushing and taking an extra hit, I think that big ol' Andy Reid would prefer that. So
Agreed.
um, I think I'm leaning more Lawrence than Mahomes on this.
Yeah, I think I am too now.
Um, all right, so then we're going to my other one.
Yep.
I got to be a negative Nancy on one of these. I'm picking Khalil Herbert to be under on 35 and a half rushing yards. Um, I honestly, I think Chicago's offense will have a better showing this week because Fields had his little boohoo session on, well, F the coaches. They're the reason
Hmm.
things aren't going good. And then I guess they had like a real bro session and they're like, yeah, now we're cool. Yeah. We aired it out. Woo. So I think that Fields might. So, I mean, basically, Fields was bitching about how he doesn't run. They're not running him anymore. And that was
Hmm.
his strength. I think they're going to run Fields a lot and let him air it out a little bit more freely. And I think they're going to be a little bit less trying to establish Herbert this week. And honestly, I think they're making the pivot to Roshan Johnson. So yeah, I'm going under on Herbert hitting 35 yards.
Yeah, and the only thing I would side on caution is to keep an eye on um any news coming out of Chicago, because last week Deontay Foreman was a healthy and active. Now, even with him not touching the field, last week Khalil Herbert had seven rushing attempts for exactly 35 yards. Um, Look, I think Kansas City has a better defense than Tampa Bay. I think that this game gets out of hand really quickly, especially with it being at Arrowhead. I think that Khalil Herbert will be used in the passing game more than he will in the running game. Which so far this year, out of his touches, he has 16 rushing attempts and 8 targets. If that says anything about a running back, it means that, hey, we're playing from behind and we need to throw the ball and not run the ball. If your ratio is only 2-1, so yeah, I like that line a lot. The only thing I worry about is Khalil Herbert does have breakout speed too. I mean, all it takes is one broken tackle and he's gone. But again, you can't look at these lines that way. If you're looking strictly from a volume perspective, yeah, I think Roshan Johnson's the new guy in Chicago. And from a DFS standpoint, not even on sleeper, but if you're looking at FanDuel or DraftKings, like I'm playing a guy like Roshan Johnson over Khalil Herbert, just for differential variation, but also because I think that he ends up having a better game. So, boy, this Chicago team is just something ugly to look at, man. They really are the ugly stepsister of the NFC North. And I was on Facebook earlier today and on Twitter earlier today, and all these Bears fans, we're one game out, or no, they're in first. They're in first right now, aren't they? Or are
The
they 0-2?
Bears?
Yeah, I don't. That's how irrelevant the Bears are to me. Still, is I don't even know if they're
I
two and
thought
zero
they were
or
0
zero and
2.
two. That's how irrelevant they are to me. Yeah, this Bears team is ugly, man. I thought they were bad last year. I think they're worse this year, and that's even after bringing in DJ Moore. Like, they're bad. They're really bad. They could be in a quarterback conundrum next year where they could potentially trade Justin Fields and draft the kid out of USC. So I don't know,
Yeah, I mean
man.
that was the whole, yeah, Bears are 0 2.
Oh man,
Tied with the Vikings. um I
best
I
looking
think
0-2 team I've ever seen.
I mean,
God,
we're
I'm
in
a
the
homer.
territory again where it's like, is Justin Fields a good NFL quarterback or a good fantasy quarterback? I mean, he hasn't even been a good fantasy quarterback yet this year. But yeah, I think a lot of people were entering this year thinking like it was a done deal that Fields is an elite guy. And I think it's still a question out there right now.
Yeah, Justin Fields sits exactly middle in the pack out of 32 NFL teams, QB 16, averaging right around 16 fantasy points through 2 weeks. Three interceptions, one lost fumble, only three total touchdowns, one rushing touchdown. I want to say last year, hold on, I got to look at this now. So through 2 weeks, he has 13 rushing attempts. Last year, through 2 weeks, 19. So not as a scale big of a drop down as I thought it was going to be. Because yeah, I know that Elebris or whatever the coach's name is out in Chicago. They always hire coaches with weird fucking names. Um, they're not going to be able to contain him. I think that Fields, he's going to be one of those guys that does win you a couple of games this year with his legs. He's going to put up a 40 burger with, 150 yards rushing with 3 rushing touchdowns and, maybe a passing touchdown. But I wouldn't hold my breath on that anytime soon, especially with their upcoming schedule against KC, Denver, Washington, maybe against Minnesota. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I going back to the Khalil Herbert. I like the under on that. I tend to not play too many unders because I like to cheer for the over and I like to see the number go up versus holding my breath on, a person not getting the ball. But with this matchup and with this situation with Roshan Johnson and a blowout situation with Kansas City, I like the under there.
One thing I'll just add on Fields since we were talking about him. He I mean, it seemed like he was a breakout for him last year. He sucked at the start of last year. It felt like he was still lost, that he hadn't found his way. It took him not till like week 4 or 5 before he started actually
Hmm.
putting up some big fantasy points. I mean, I remember he was in Dumpsville for some people at the start of the year. It just felt like he was a bust. And then all of a sudden it started clicking, and that coincided with him rushing it more. It was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about week 6 or 7 when he actually
Yep.
started rushing at double digit times and all of a sudden putting up like 80 to 100 yards each game. Before that, it was not so. So he's got to get back to rushing the ball. That's what made him special, and they haven't had him doing it yet this year. So I think they're going to switch that this week, and they're not going to win the game, but it might be a little bit more stomachable for fantasy reasons for Fields.
Yeah, and
I
I'm
hope.
curious
I
now. I
hope.
mean, so I mean, Roshan Johnson, he's basically split carries with um not Foreman, Khalil Herbert. I mean, he has 9 total carries through 2 weeks, which isn't a ton. But again, I mean, 0-2, they're probably getting blown out. I wouldn't be surprised if, Roshan Johnson and Khalil Herbert both have around 7 carries
I
um,
think you're going to
this
see
week.
Roshan going up
Yeah.
and Herbert going down as the year goes on.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it'll be more 50-50 for at least the next 2-3 weeks. I think, that week 6 matchup at home against the Vikings. I think that's when we start to see Roshan Johnson start to break out as the new RB1. I mean, I said this from the beginning. I think Roshan Johnson's going to be the Bears' best running back since Matt Forte. I mean, which doesn't say a lot. Um, but I think Khalil Herbert's going to find himself RB2 territory, potentially on a different team in the next year or two. I think Deontay Foreman is definitely a cut candidate, I think he's on a 1 year deal. So he won't be back next year, especially if Roshan Johnson can live up to the hype and play, nearly as good as he did when he was at Texas under Bijan Shadow. So we'll see, man. But yeah, this Bears team is god awful. So if you're taking any prop bets, I'm probably taking the under if it's a Chicago Bear. All right, so my fourth line, I'm not crazy on this line. It was just one because I feel like it's a safe line. And that's Dallas Cowboy wide receiver CeeDee Lamb over 70.5 yards. Through 2 weeks, he has 17 targets, 13 of those coming just in week 2 against the Jets. He in week 1 caught for 77 yards, and then week 2, 143 yards. I think Tony Pollard, he's still going to be a big part of this offense, but this offense runs through CeeDee Lamb. I mean, the guy is going to see Justin Jefferson type volume because that's what he is to this team. He's their Justin Jefferson, and I think he's actually not as far behind Justin Jefferson as maybe I personally thought at the beginning of the season. Jamar Chase is off to a slow start. If someone told me that they would rather have CeeDee Lamb over Jamar Chase this season, I wouldn't necessarily be upset with you. Like, you're not wrong. And looking at this week alone against Arizona, in Arizona, on a grass field against a porous defense, um, I think he gets to this point relatively quickly. I do worry about blowout potential. The thing though is that there's going to be a blowout. CeeDee Lamb is going to be involved in the scoring, and I think he's going to be involved in the volume and the yardage. So 71 yards to break this line, I don't think it's too much to ask for, especially where he's averaging, week 119 and a quarter yards per catch, last week 13. I mean, if he can get anywhere in between there, 15 yards, that's 5 catches, and he hit, and he's good for that in the first half. So what are your thoughts on CeeDee Lamb and 70.5 receiving yards this week against Arizona?
So I'm a CD owner in my redraft league. I love CD Lamb. I had him as my my wide receiver 4 coming into the year. I mean I think he'll finish wide receiver 4. I was so JJ, um, Jamar Chase, and then I didn't have Hill at number 3 like I should have. I thought it was gonna be AJ Brown and then CD right after that. I think he's in a definite top 5 tier. Um, so it's definitely doable to hit 70.5 yards. But for me, it's like I'm like 60% confident in it. That I know we're not supposed to play game script, but goddamn, they're playing the Arizona Cardinals. um,
Arizona though, let's
and
let's let's be fair. The Giants would be 0-2 if the Cardinals didn't blow a 20-point lead.
yeah,
I mean, the Cardinals hung in there for a while. I think the Cowboys are by far better than the Giants, but I mean, I think it stays close at least for a quarter, and that's all it's going to take. I mean, 2 drives and CD could hit, but keep going. I want to hear your logic because I don't think you're egregious by any means, but go back to the
I
game
mean,
script.
I I certainly hope he eclipses 70 yards because I got him in my redraft league. I think he there's no the only reason he's not going to have a good game is because they don't need to throw the ball anymore because they're just smothering the Cardinals because I
Sure.
still think their defense is going to feast on them. But yeah, in the first half they could put up a bunch. So I'm not totally against it. I'm just a little bit nervous that the Cardinals suck and the script might force them out of throwing it to CD, but
For sure.
I think it's a better than 50-50 chance that he hits that. There's nobody on Arizona that's going to stop him from getting that. The only thing that's going to stop him from getting that would be them not throwing it to him in the second half.
Yeah, I mean, and looking at their depth chart right now, so at receiver they have CeeDee Lamb, Jalen Brooks, Brandon Cooks, Michael Gallup, and Jalen Tolbert, and then with rookie, I think he's a rookie, no, second year tight end Jake Ferguson. CeeDee Lamb is literally the only guy who is getting any sort of volume. I think Tony Pollard has the next highest target so far this season in the passing game for Dallas. Maybe it's Rico Dowdle. No, one target. Um, yeah, I mean, your logic is fair. I mean, I definitely think that if there's a trap game where you're like, oh, CeeDee Lamb's gonna have this in no time, like it would be against Arizona. But at the same time, for CeeDee Lamb, that's literally potentially 2 plays, and he has that in the first quarter. So I do think that there are other lines that we've talked about so far that I like more, especially if we're taking, 8 picks and we're making one 4-person slip, which again, on Sleeper, you can have up to 8 picks and up to 100x on each slip. I mean, I wouldn't, so to this point, I mean, I like all 7 of our picks. And who knows,
Ollie,
maybe we'll throw on an 8-man slip and see if we can hit 100x. But
yeah, is there like a $2 or $1 bet on that?
yeah, so on Sleeper you can minimum bet start at $1 and you can have anything up to I don't even know what the max is. I think it might be $2,000 or where your max winning I think is around $10,000 or something.
Oh,
I don't
see
know.
that one.
I don't know exactly. Oh yeah. Let's just go ahead and swipe the old credit card for that one. Um yeah, I mean, I think that if you want to take a long shot, I mean, I think the 7 picks we've gone through so far, if you want to throw a buck on it and try and get 100x, I mean, I'm liking these lines so far. So I don't know,
I
Kevin.
think
Maybe
we
we'll.
got we got all 8 of them out there so far. I got them ranked on my little spreadsheet here, spreadsheet guy. So we got out of me, we got Hertz, Mahomes, Najee, and Herbert. And out of you, we got Hunter Henry, uh, Mahomes rushing, Trevor Lawrence, and CD.
Yep. Oh yeah. So we have
So,
7. So we have 7 because you can only have one player once. So we could have either Mahomes
oh,
passing or Mahomes rushing. Um,
okay. So how about we go through and we vote what our top two from mine, top two from yours, and we make our combined four ticket,
I
and then we
like
can
it.
also play a seven ticket.
I like it. I like it. So
So when it comes to my slip, what's your top one?
I think the top one that you have,
You want me to list them again?
yeah, list them off for me again.
I got Jalen Hurts over or Jalen Hurts to get a rushing touchdown. I got Patrick Mahomes to eclipse 282 passing yards, Najee Harris to eclipse 48 and a half rushing yards, or Khalil Herbert to be under 35 and a half rushing yards.
Yeah, I think my go-to on yours is Najee over 48.5 rushing yards.
Oh, okay. I got that as my number two. Uh, my number one from my slip was the Hurts over one rushing touchdown.
Yeah, for me, that's number three. And the only reason why that's number three for me is because touchdown dependency is always tough. But like we saw tonight, we had Christian McCaffrey to get an anytime touchdown. And you get that, and then the sweat becomes so much less sweaty because all it takes is one play versus trying to chase after yards or receptions or anything like that. So, yeah,
What was your number two?
number two, I would say the Khalil Herbert under.
Oh, that
Yeah,
was my last. That was my most nervous one.
well, and the only reason why I have him there is because I really don't like the Patrick Mahomes over 282 and a half, or whatever his line was simply because if I'm looking at game script, that one I think to me has the most volatility in terms of going the way that we don't want it to. I think that if they put up points, he's going to put it up to the air. So, I mean, does he hit that line? Probably. Um, I just think Khalil Herbert is in a really shitty situation this week. And I think that the running game for Chicago is going to run through Justin Fields when they do run the ball. But I think Casey gets up big early. I don't think that he's going to get too many attempts running the ball. So that's my logic there. But again, I wouldn't be
Hmm.
mad at the Jalen Hurts over one half rushing touchdown over Khalil Herbert.
So we're in agreement on Najee, and then I think I want to go Hurts. You got me
Yeah.
nervous about the Herbert one because of the whole it takes is one rushing play. Say they it's like third and 30 and they just hand the ball to Herbert to punt the ball and he gets 20 yards on that
Right.
rush. So I think I want to go Hurts for the one rushing touchdown and
Okay.
Najee.
Yeah, because they play Tampa Bay this week. Yeah, I think that
Yeah.
happens. So
All
okay.
right. Now let's go over to yours here.
Yeah, so my lines again, Patrick Mahomes over 17 and a half rushing yards, Trevor Lawrence over 13 and a half rushing yards, Hunter Henry over 3.5 receptions, and CeeDee Lamb over 70 and a half receiving yards. Who's your number one on my side?
My favorite on there is actually Hunter Henry, 3.5.
He's also my favorite line on my end as well. So he is definitely a lock for me. In a close second after, further discussion, I think I have to go Trevor Lawrence over 13 and a half rushing yards. I think the matchup against Houston, the situation, um, it only takes one play. And I mean, it literally takes one play. Kind of similar to that Khalil Herbert 3rd and 30 situation. It might be like a
Yeah.
2nd and 20 after a holding penalty. And, you know, they're clearing the field and Trevor Lawrence just runs up the middle for, 16 yards or 17 yards and slides down and boom, you hit the line. So the only thing with quarterback lines with rushing that I always worry about is they take a big sack. I mean, because he could be at 15 rushing yards and all of a sudden he gets a 8-yard sack and all of a sudden he's down to 7 rushing yards. So
Oh, but the sacks get deducted from their passing yards, not their rushing yards.
really,
Yeah, I was watching tonight because Danny Dimes, we need those damn rushing yards. He was getting sacked and they take it out of his passing yards. If he fumbles the ball and he runs out there and jumps on the ball after a fumble, that's a negative rush. But otherwise, they'd subtract the sack yards out of his passing.
that may be the dumbest shit I've ever heard, but in the spirit of gambling, I'll take it. Yeah, so I think Trevor Lawrence for me is a lock at 13 and a half over. What do you think? Do you like him, CD, or Patrick Mahomes lines better?
So I ranked CD as my least favorite on there, and I've gone back and forth on Lawrence Mahomes for my I'm naming two different quarterbacks. I'm not thinking that Lawrence Mahomes is Patrick Mahomes like before, but I think I lean Trevor Lawrence on this. So yeah, I'm gonna agree with you. I like Trevor Lawrence as the number two.
All right, so lock it in. Tony and Kevin Sunday slip this week will include Jalen Hurts over 0.5 rushing touchdowns, Hunter Henry over 3.5 receptions, Trevor Lawrence over 13.5 receiving yards. And Kevin, what was the fourth one? I forgot on your end.
Not Najee
Najee
Harris over
Harris.
48 and a half rushing yards.
Lock those lines in soon. And again, the difference between sleeper and a lot of these other daily fantasy prop apps is sleepers lines do bump, and when I say bump, it means they do move up. So for example, if you don't lock in Hunter Henry soon, if a lot of people start playing him, his line may go from 3.5 to 4. And so instead of a 4 reception game being a win for you, it becomes a push, and you need that 5th reception to actually break that tie and hitting that line. A lot of sites like Prize Picks, they bump theirs relatively quickly when there's popularity plays. Sleeper, what they do is they have a multiplier base. So instead of having slips that are multiplied every single time with the number of picks that you have, it depends on the props that you take. Some overs and unders are going to have different multiplier values. So if you see a line that is at a 0.163 for an over and a 2.88 for the under, what Sleeper is saying is you have a higher probability of hitting the over, and they're going to pay out less money. And so those picks that have a higher multiplier also carry a higher volatility. So again, play responsibly, gamble. You can afford to lose, have fun. We don't want anyone losing their house over this. But tune in next week as we go over our slips. We got some good football this weekend, Kevin. I mean,
Yeah.
the Vikings, I'm not super excited. I don't even know who we play this week, to be honest. I'm kind of Chargers, right? 0-2 Chargers.
So yeah, I'm nervous because the Chargers, I didn't realize they're 0-2. That I feel like they've been in 2 close games.
Yep.
That just didn't come up. I mean, Herbert's what, like the QB3, QB2 we said
he's
earlier.
Up there.
He is gonna carve us up, I think. So I guess another good week for Cousins, because I think you're gonna have to throw to keep up with the Chargers. But I think it's gonna be a very high scoring affair in Minnesota. And honestly, I think it's a coin toss who wins this one. It could go either way.
Yeah, some injury news to keep an eye on. Austin Eckler is still questionable. He hasn't really practiced this week. He's taking care of an ankle injury he sustained in week 1. So I think if Eckler doesn't play, I think it definitely boosts the Vikings' chances of winning. If Eckler does play, man, that guy's really good at football. I'm still thankful some guy in our league traded him to me, even though he missed last week. I appreciate that, Kevin.
I feel like Keenan Allen has a chip on his shoulder whenever he plays the Vikes, which isn't that often, but because the Vikings took Cordell Patterson over him way back in the day when they drafted him. So whenever he comes to town, he wants to just destroy us, and he very may.
He used up his 130-point game this season last week. So I mean, he's going to go there for 30 again. Or he's going to go for 3, one of the two. But knowing our secondary, I wouldn't be surprised if he goes out there and puts up a 13 for 130 and 3 type of day. So a lot of good football on. Make sure to check us out next week. Kevin and I's schedule will be getting more normalized back to our weekly recorded podcast. You can find normally on Saturday mornings, right, Kevin? We normally record on Friday nights into Saturday, so we can get everyone prepped for Sunday football. Until then, Kevin, I think it's night, right? I think you're ready to go tucky-tuck after that meat buffet of a dinner down in Mexico.
I'm going to go sweat myself to sleep, and then I'm going into work tomorrow, crossing the border in the afternoon. And the second I cross the border into San Diego, I'm going to hit submit on my 4-player ticket, because for some unknown reason, I can't place bets on the Sleeper app while I'm in Tijuana. But as soon as I cross into the good old US of A, I will place that bet and be all good.
Yes, make sure to check on Sleeper's website, all available states to play. It is only United States. There's a handful of states, including your home state of Washington, that unfortunately you cannot play. Luckily, you're only, a 15-minute drive down to Oregon, which is a state that you can play Sleeper. So,
yeah.
Until then, next time, folks, have a good night, and we will talk to you next week.
Peace.